My twin sister and I shared a liver for 16 years, earning our parents $13,000 a month in medical study payments. When the doctor said we could finally separate, my sister dug her nails into our shared ribs and whispered, "I'll die without you." Then my parents installed a lock on the outside of our basement door and said it was just until I stopped upsetting her. My sister and I shared a liver and part of our rib cage for 16 years. The monthly check started arriving when we were 3, $8,000 from the University Medical Center, $5,000 from a rare conditions research fund, smaller amounts from medical journals that bought our imaging scans. Mom quit her second job the day we became longitudinal study subjects. She kept a spreadsheet of our worth, updating it after every appointment. By the time we were 10, we'd been in 17 medical papers. Vanessa loved when the researchers called us special. I memorized the exit locations in every hospital we visited. When Dr. Lauren said separation was finally possible, I felt my first real hope in years. Vanessa's nails dug into our shared ribs. "We're not doing it," she announced, her voice shaking. "I'll die without you. My organs won't remember how to work alone." Mom's hand tightened on the renewal forms from the Pediatric Anomaly Institute. $75,000 for another year of orderly evaluations. "The girls aren't ready for such a traumatic change," she told Dr. Lauren smoothly, but I hadn't said anything. That night, Vanessa pressed her forehead against mine. 60 of separated twins experience organ failure, she whispered. Mom showed me the studies. I'd seen those same studies. They were from the 1980s about twins who shared hearts. We only shared a liver, some ribs, minor vessels, nothing that couldn't be divided, nothing that would call us. Vanessa knew this too. I'd seen her Google searches. The basement door locked from the outside now. "Just until you stop upsetting your sister," Dad said, installing the deadbolt. Vanessa had started hyperventilating whenever I mentioned surgery, clutching at her chest, claiming she couldn't breathe. The research team was paying triple for stress response data in conjoined pairs. Every panic attack was another data point worth hundreds. I started keeping track of everything. 3 ongoing studies, 6 medical conferences a year, where we were presented a monthly feature in the Congenital Conditions Quarterly. Last year alone, we'd been flown to 14 universities for grand rounds. At each one, Vanessa glowed while telling our story. "We're not two people," she'd say, gripping my hand until my fingers went numb. "We're one person who happens to have 2 minds." The medical students would scribble notes. The checks would clear. I'd smile until my face hurt. "What will happen to me?" Vanessa whispered in the dark, her breath hot against my ear. "When we're apart, who will remind me to breathe? Who will make sure my heart keeps beating?" She'd trained herself to match my breathing perfectly, to sync our heartbeats when she pressed close. Sometimes I'd hold my breath just to see if she'd notice. "She always did. See?" She'd gasp, "I need you." But once, when she thought I was sleeping, I heard her breathing normally, independently for hours, 3 months until we turned 18. Mom had already committed us to a 5-year study on psychological adaptation in adult conjoined twins. The contract specified we'd only be paid if we remained connected. Dad showed it to me like a threat. Vanessa had started sleeping with her arm wrapped around our connection point, whimpering if I shifted in the night. "Practice being alone," I told her once. She didn't speak for 3 days, just hummed the same 4 notes over and over until I begged her to stop. The separation surgery had a 98% success rate for cases like ours. I'd memorized the statistics, hidden the printouts under our mattress. Vanessa found them and ate the pages one by one while maintaining eye contact. "Now the lies are gone," she said, paper between her teeth. The ink stained her lips blue for days. That night, she told our parents I was trying to cull her. Mom installed a baby monitor in the basement. "For your safety," she explained, but it only turned on when Vanessa cried, and Vanessa had learned to cry on command. Huge gasping sobs that shook both our bodies. "She wants to cut me away," she'd wail. "She wants to leave me empty. 2 months and 23 days until freedom." Unless Vanessa figured out what I was planning, unless she found the phone I'd hidden, the messages to Dr. Lauren, the emancipation paperwork I filled out one letter at a time while she slept. She'd started taking sleeping pills, crushing them into our shared dinner so we'd both go under. But I'd learned to make myself throw up silently, quickly, before the substances hit my system. "Together forever," Vanessa murmured in her drugged sleep, her fingers twisted in my hair, just like Mom promised. The basement walls were covered in her drawings now, 2 girls with one shadow, hearts connected by red crayon veins. In every picture, one girl was smiling, the other had no face at all. I'd already chosen which one I'd be. The phone vibrated against my hip, hidden beneath layers of clothing where Vanessa couldn't feel it. Dr. Lauren had texted back. My heart hammered as I waited for Vanessa's breathing to deepen from the sleeping pills before checking the message. "Legal team reviewing your case. Keep documenting everything." I deleted the message immediately, then cleared the trash folder. Vanessa had gotten too good at checking my digital footprints when she pretended to sleep. The emancipation paperwork was almost complete, hidden inside the lining of an old stuffed animal that Vanessa had declared creepy years ago. One more signature line to forage Mom's, and I'd be ready. Vanessa stirred beside me, mumbling something about blood tests. Even unconscious, she was performing. I'd started timing her sleep-talking episodes. They always happened exactly 20 minutes after Mom's footsteps passed overhead, just long enough for our mother to settle in and hear her distressed daughter through the baby monitor. The next morning, Vanessa woke up, clutching her side of our connection, gasping dramatically. Mom rushed downstairs within seconds, still in her robe, cradling her coffee mug like it held liquid gold. The University of Michigan had just increased their offer by 20 for exclusive imaging rights to our separation point. "She was pulling away from me all night," Vanessa whimpered, letting tears pull perfectly in her eyes without spilling. She'd been practicing that trick in the bathroom mirror when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I could feel my organs shutting down. Mom smoothed Vanessa's hair, her wedding ring catching the basement's fluorescent light. The ring she'd upgraded last year after the National Institute of Health started their twin study. "Maybe we should increase your anxiety medication, sweetheart?" Dr. Morrison said he could prescribe something stronger. I kept my breathing steady, matching Vanessa's rhythm to avoid suspicion. Dr. Morrison was the psychiatrist who diagnosed me with separation obsession disorder after a 5-minute video consultation that Mom had secretly recorded. His signature was on half the forms keeping us in this basement. "The pulling is getting worse," Vanessa continued, pressing her palm against our ribs. "Sometimes I can't tell which heartbeat is mine anymore." That was almost funny. I'd felt Vanessa practicing irregular breathing patterns last week, trying to throw off our synchronized rhythms. She'd given up after I started humming show tunes to maintain my own pace. Mom left after extracting promises that I'd be gentler with my movements. The moment her footsteps faded, Vanessa's tears dried instantly. She pulled out her phone, the newest model, a gift from the research team at Johns Hopkins for being their star subject. "The documentary crew wants to interview us next month," she said, scrolling through emails. "They're offering $50,000 for exclusive rights to our story." I watched her type a response, accepting immediately, signing both our names with practiced ease. She'd been forging my signature since we were 12, starting with permission slips for field trips I never wanted to attend. "You know what's funny?" Vanessa said, not looking up from her phone. "Doctor," Lauren called. "Mom yesterday said she was concerned about some unusual communication from our case." Mom told her we'd switched hospitals. My stomach dropped, but I kept folding laundry, separating our clothes into piles that would never actually be separated. The hidden phone felt like it was burning against my skin. "I wonder who would try to contact our doctor behind our parents' backs," Vanessa continued, her voice light and casual. "That would be really stupid, wouldn't it? Especially when Mom has all the legal rights until we're 18. She was fishing, but she didn't have proof. Not yet. I focused on matching socks, noting that Vanessa had started buying identical pairs to mine, making it impossible to tell whose were whose. Another small way to erase the boundaries between us. That afternoon, the research team from Columbia arrived for our monthly evaluation. Vanessa transformed the moment they entered, becoming fragile and dependent, leaning into me like I was the only thing keeping her upright. I'd learned to play my part too. The selfish sister who didn't understand the sacred bond we shared. "The synchronicity is remarkable," Dr. Jackson murmured, watching our vital signs on her tablet. "Their heart rates align within 2 beats per minute." Vanessa squeezed my hand in our practiced pattern. 2 short, 1 long, our signal to breathe together. I obeyed, knowing the cameras were recording, knowing this footage would be analyzed frame by frame in some medical journal. "We've been practicing meditation together," Vanessa told them, her voice soft and dreamy. To prepare for a lifetime of connection, Dr. Jackson made notes while her assistant set up the cognitive tests, always the same questions designed to show how our minds had melded over the years. Vanessa had memorized my answers from previous sessions, matching them perfectly to demonstrate our psychic bond. "What's your earliest memory?" There's something deeply unsettling about how calculated this whole medical circus is. The exact dollar amounts from each institution. Mom's spreadsheet tracking their value like their stocks instead of daughters. Dr. Jackson asked me. "The butterfly room at the museum," I answered truthfully. "Yellow monarchs landing on our shoulders." "Mine too," Vanessa said immediately. Though I knew her real first memory was breaking my favorite doll and blaming it on the cat. We remember everything together. The team exchanged meaningful looks, probably calculating how much this synchronicity was worth in their next grant proposal. I smiled and played along, thinking about the lawyer Dr. Lauren had recommended, the one who specialized in medical autonomy cases. That night, Vanessa started her new routine. She'd wait until I was almost asleep, then jerk suddenly, gasping like she couldn't breathe. The first time, I'd actually been concerned. By the 5th time, I recognized the performance. Mom had installed motion sensors that alerted her phone whenever we moved too much at night. "I'm dying," Vanessa whispered loud enough for the baby monitor. "Every time you pull away, I die a little bit." I wanted to tell her that I'd seen her medical files, the ones she thought she'd hidden. Her organs were perfectly healthy, stronger than mine in some cases. The only thing culling her was the thought of losing her meal ticket. 2 months and 20 days left. The next morning brought a new horror. Mom announced we'd be moving to a more secure facility for our safety, a private medical residence where we could be monitored 24 hours a day. The brochure showed a pristine white building with no windows on the ground floor. "It's for the best," Dad said, avoiding my eyes. "The Pediatric Anomaly Institute is funding everything. You'll have your own medical staff." Vanessa clapped her hands like a child at Christmas. "Will we have a bigger room? Can we decorate it ourselves?" I calculated quickly. The move was scheduled for 3 weeks. If I was going to escape, it had to be before then. Once we were in that facility, surrounded by medical staff who were being paid to keep us together, I'd never get out. That night, while Vanessa performed her breathing difficulties for the monitor, I felt around the edge of our mattress for the phone. My fingers found only empty space. The hiding spot had been discovered. "Looking for something?" Vanessa whispered, her breath hot against my ear. "I had the most interesting conversation with Dr. Lauren today. She seemed very concerned about you, said you'd been showing signs of distress." My blood ran cold. Vanessa continued, her voice still sweet and soft. "Don't worry, I told her everything was fine, that you were just confused, that sometimes you forget we're one person." She pulled out my phone from under her pillow, waving it just out of reach. "Mom was very interested to see your search history, all those articles about successful separations, all those emails to lawyers." I lunged for the phone, but Vanessa had already thrown it across the room where it shattered against the concrete wall. The sound brought Mom running, and Vanessa immediately started hyperventilating, clutching at her chest. She tried to hurt me. Vanessa gasped between theatrical sobs. She said she didn't care if I died. I opened my mouth to protest, but Mom was already preparing a sedative. The kind they used for our high-stress evaluations, the kind that made me too foggy to resist whatever came next. As the needle went in, I saw Vanessa's smile, not her public smile, the one she wore for cameras and doctors. Her real smile, the one that reminded me we shared blood, but had never shared a heart. 2 months and 19 days, if I lasted that long. The sedative made everything feel underwater, but I fought to stay conscious. Mom was on the phone, her voice drifting in and out of focus. Yes, Dr. Morrison. Increased aggression. We may need to move up the timeline. Vanessa curled against me, playing the traumatized sister for our mother's benefit. Her fingers traced patterns on our shared ribs, spelling out words only I could feel. Stayforever. I closed my eyes and started planning again. The phone was gone, but Dr. Lauren knew something was wrong. The emancipation papers were still hidden. I just needed to be smarter, more careful. I needed to play Vanessa's game better than she did. 2 months and 19 days. I could make it. I had to. The sedative wore off slowly, leaving me groggy and disoriented. Vanessa had positioned herself carefully while I was unconscious, wrapping both arms around our connection point like she was protecting it from invisible threats. Her breathing matched mine perfectly, a practiced synchronization that made my skin crawl. Mom stood by the basement door with a clipboard, making notes. The Pediatric Anomaly Institute had requested hourly behavioral logs leading up to our move. Each observation was worth 50. Even my drugged sleep had monetary value. I tested my limbs carefully, feeling the familiar weight of Vanessa against me. She stirred immediately, her fingers tightening on our shared ribs. The performance never stopped, even when she thought no one was watching. But I'd learned to see through it, to notice the calculated precision in every movement. The next few days brought a new level of surveillance. Mom installed additional cameras in the basement corners, their red lights blinking constantly. Dad ran cables along the walls, connecting everything to a central monitoring station upstairs. Vanessa helped them test the angles, making sure every inch of our living space was visible. I kept my face neutral, playing the subdued sister who'd learned her lesson. Inside, my mind raced through contingencies. The phone was gone, but Dr. Lauren knew something was wrong. The emancipation papers were still hidden in the stuffed animal. I just needed to find another way to communicate with the outside world. Vanessa started a new routine during our daily exercises. She'd stumble at specific moments, gasping and clutching at our connection point. Mom would rush to document these episodes, uploading the footage to the research portal. The University of Pennsylvania had started a new study on physical coordination in conjoined twins. Every stumble was worth data points. I played along, studying her with practiced concern, but I noticed how her stumbles only happened when the cameras were recording, how her gasps followed a predictable pattern. She'd rehearsed this routine in front of the bathroom mirror, perfecting the timing. One morning, while Vanessa was distracted by her phone, I managed to check the calendar hidden under our mattress. 17 days until the move, my window was closing fast. I needed to accelerate my plans, but carefully. Any suspicious behavior would trigger another round of sedatives. The research teams increased their visits. Sometimes 2 or 3 groups would come in a single day, each paying for exclusive access to different aspects of our condition. Vanessa thrived during these sessions, telling our story with practiced emotion. She'd developed different versions for different audiences, emphasizing whatever aspects would generate the most sympathy and funding. During a cognitive evaluation from Stanford, I noticed something interesting. The researcher's assistant had left her tablet unlocked on the table while setting up equipment. The screen showed an email inbox, tantalizingly close. If I could just send one message to Dr. Lauren, explain what was really happening. But Vanessa noticed my glance. Her hand found mine under the table, squeezing hard enough to hurt. Her smile never wavered as she answered the researcher's questions, but her nails dug into my palm with warning pressure. That night, she confronted me in the darkness. Her whisper was soft enough to avoid the monitors, but sharp enough to cut. She'd seen me looking at the tablet. She knew what I was thinking. If I tried anything like that again, she'd tell Mom I was planning to hurt myself. They'd sedate me until the move, maybe longer. I lay still, feeling her breath against my ear, her arms wrapped possessively around our connection. She'd gotten better at this game, anticipating my moves before I made them. But I'd gotten better too. I'd learned patience, misdirection, the art of seeming defeated while planning victory. The next morning brought a surprise. Dr. Jackson from Columbia returned with a new proposal. They wanted to do a documentary series following our daily lives for the next year. The payment was substantial, enough to cover the down payment on the new facility Mom had been eyeing. Vanessa's eyes lit up at the mention of cameras following us constantly. She immediately started planning which stories to tell, which emotions to display. Mom was already calculating the profits, her fingers flying across her phone's calculator app. But I saw an opportunity. A documentary crew meant outside observers, people who weren't on Mom's payroll. If I could somehow signal to them, make them see what was really happening. The crew arrived 3 days later. 2 camera operators, a sound technician, and a director named Marcus, who spoke in soothing tones about capturing our authentic experience. Vanessa immediately charmed them, sharing anecdotes about our childhood that were half true, half performance art. I watched the crew carefully, studying their routines. The sound technician, a woman named Saba, seemed different from the others. She watched us with sharp eyes, noting the discrepancies between Vanessa's stories and my reactions. During a break, she adjusted her equipment near me, and I caught her giving me a questioning look. Over the next few days, I developed a subtle system. When Vanessa told her rehearsed stories, I'd tap my fingers against my leg in a specific pattern. Nothing obvious enough for the cameras, but visible to someone paying attention. Saba started watching for these signals, her expression growing more concerned with each session. Vanessa noticed the crew's changing dynamic. Watching Vanessa weaponize medical visits like she's collecting Pokémon cards while our narrator taps out distress signals is peak sibling rivalry with stakes. Saba, the sound tech, might be the first person to notice that this touching twin story has more red flags than a circus tent. She doubled down on her performances, adding new layers of dependency and fear. She started having episodes during filming, clutching at our connection and gasping about feeling disconnected. The director added up, calling for close-ups of her tears, but Saba kept watching me. During one particularly dramatic scene where Vanessa claimed she could feel my thoughts pulling away from hers, I managed to mouth 2 words when the camera was focused on my sister. "Help me." The next day, S.A. positioned her equipment differently. She created a blind spot where the documentary cameras couldn't see us, right by the sound mixing board. When Vanessa was distracted by the director's questions, Saba slipped me a note. "I know something's wrong. What do you need?" My heart pounded as I palmed the small piece of paper. This was my chance, but I had to be careful. Vanessa had developed an uncanny ability to sense when I was hiding something. I waited until she was deeply engaged in describing our psychic connection before writing a response. "Contact Dr. Lauren at University Medical Center. Tell her they're moving us in 11 days. Please." I slipped the note back to S.A. during a equipment adjustment. She read it quickly, then nodded almost imperceptibly. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope, but Vanessa was too observant to miss the change in my demeanor. That night she pressed closer than usual, her arms tight around our connection. She whispered stories about twins who died during separation, about organs that forgot how to function alone. Her fingers traced the outline of our shared ribs, mapping the territory she refused to surrender. The documentary crew returned daily, and Siba always found ways to position herself near me. Through subtle gestures and careful timing, she communicated that she'd reached Dr. Lauren. Help was coming, but I needed to hold on. Mom announced that the moving truck was scheduled for next week. She showed us pictures of our new room in the facility, emphasizing the medical equipment built into the walls, everything we could need without ever leaving, without ever separating. Vanessa helped Mom pack our belongings, carefully wrapping her drawings of conjoined hearts. She'd started a new series showing what happened to the girl without a face when she was alone. The images were disturbing, designed to unsettle me. She hung them where I'd see them first thing each morning. With 5 days left until the move, the documentary crew filmed what was supposed to be their final session. Vanessa gave an emotional speech about looking forward to our new home, to a lifetime of connection and love. The director praised her authenticity, talking about Emmy potential, but Saba had positioned her equipment to create another blind spot. As Vanessa basked in the director's praise, Saba showed me her phone screen, a message from Dr. Lauren. Legal injunction filed. Stall the move if possible. Team standing by. I had to buy time. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I initiated one of Vanessa's episodes. I jerked suddenly in my sleep, gasping and clutching at our connection. Vanessa woke instantly, confused by my performance of her own routine. Mom came running at the sounds of distress. I let tears stream down my face, borrowing Vanessa's techniques. I claimed I felt something wrong with our liver, a sharp pain that came and went. Mom's face went pale. Any complications could affect our value to the research teams. By morning, Mom had scheduled emergency consultations with 3 different specialists. The move would have to be postponed until they cleared us medically. Vanessa watched me with narrowed eyes, recognizing her own tactics being used against her. The first specialist found nothing wrong, but I'd learned from watching Vanessa. I described symptoms that were concerning but vague, impossible to prove or disprove. The second specialist ordered more tests. The third wanted to observe us for several days. Vanessa tried to undermine me, claiming she felt fine, that I was imagining things, but Mom couldn't risk our research value. Every test bought another day, another chance for Dr. Lauren's legal team to act. On what should have been moving day, we were in the hospital for an MRI. Vanessa held my hand with ruing force, her fury barely contained. She knew what I was doing, but couldn't expose me without revealing her own deceptions. The technician positioning us for the scan was someone I'd never seen before. As she adjusted the equipment, she leaned close and whispered quickly. She was a colleague of Dr. Lawrence. The legal team needed one more day. Could I maintain the performance? I squeezed back once for yes. Vanessa felt the movement and turned to look at me, suspicion clear in her eyes. But the MRI machine was already humming to life, trapping us in its narrow tunnel where secrets echoed off the walls. After the scan, I escalated my performance. I claimed the pain was spreading, that I felt our connection pulling in ways it never had before. Mom's panic increased with each symptom I described. She called Dad, who contacted the Pediatric Anomaly Institute about postponing our admission. Vanessa fought back with her own escalation. She started hyperventilating during my episodes, claiming my distress was affecting her organs. It became a twisted competition, each of us trying to outperform the other while Mom documented everything for the research teams. That night in the hospital, Vanessa waited until the nurses left before confronting me. She knew exactly what I was doing. She'd taught me too well, but she also knew that exposing me meant admitting her own lies. We were trapped in mutual deception. The next morning, Dr. Lauren arrived with a team of lawyers and medical ethicists. Mom tried to block them, but they had a court order. A judge had granted an emergency hearing on our medical autonomy based on concerns raised by multiple sources. Vanessa's mask finally slipped. She screamed at Dr. Lauren, accusing her of trying to murder us. She threw herself against our connection, claiming she could feel her organs shutting down. But without Mom's enabling and the basement's controlled environment, her performance looked exactly like what it was. The medical team separated us for individual evaluations. With Vanessa unable to monitor my responses, I finally told the truth. All of it. The financial exploitation, the forced confinement, the drugging, the planned move to a facility where we'd never have a chance at freedom. Vanessa told her own version, painting me as delusional and dangerous. But the lawyers had done their homework. They'd subpoenaed our medical records, the financial documents, the research contracts. The pattern of exploitation was clear. The hearing was scheduled for the next day. Mom hired her own lawyers, claiming she was protecting us from a traumatic separation. Dad stood by her side, avoiding my eyes. They'd built their entire lifestyle on our condition. Without us, the money would stop. That night in the hospital, Vanessa made one last attempt. She waited until the nurses changed shifts, then wrapped herself around our connection with desperate strength. She whispered about the surgeries that went wrong, the twins who bled out on operating tables, the empty spaces where shared organs used to be. But I'd spent 16 years learning the difference between her truth and her performances. I matched my breathing to hers one last time, felt our hearts hit in the synchronization she'd forced on us. Then I deliberately changed my rhythm, breathing independently while she struggled to follow. The judge reviewed our case the next morning. Vanessa performed for him like she had for countless researchers, tears streaming as she described our unbreakable bond. Mom presented contracts and studies showing our value as conjoined subjects. Dad talked about the trauma of separation, but I had Saba's footage. She'd kept recording after the official documentary sessions ended, capturing Vanessa's mask slipping, the calculated nature of her episodes, the threats whispered in darkness. Dr. Lauren presented medical evidence showing we could be safely separated, that Vanessa's claims of organ dependency were fabricated. The judge's decision was swift. At 16, with clear evidence of exploitation and confinement, we had the right to make our own medical decisions. If I wanted separation and Vanessa didn't, the court would appoint separate advocates to represent our interests. Vanessa's scream shook the courtroom. Not one of her performed gasps, but real, raw fury at losing control. Mom tried to approach us, but court security blocked her path. The financial empire built on our bodies was crumbling. Dr. Lauren's team took custody of us immediately. We were transferred to a specialized unit where separation surgeries were performed. Vanessa fought every step, alternating between rage and desperate pleas. She promised to stop the performances to let me have more freedom, anything to maintain our connection. But I'd made my choice 16 years ago, the first time I memorized an exit location. The surgery was scheduled for 2 weeks out, enough time for final tests and preparation. Vanessa would have her own room, her own doctors, her own chance at an independent life. The night before surgery, she tried one final manipulation. She curled against me like when we were children before the money and cameras and performances. She whispered about being scared, about not knowing who she was without me. For a moment, I almost believed her. Then I felt her fingers tracing letters on our ribs. Not a plea this time, but a promise she'd make me pay for this betrayal. Even separated, she'd find ways to hurt me. The real Vanessa had finally shown herself completely. I traced my own message back, I know, but I'm still choosing freedom. The surgical team prepped us the next morning. Why does Mom suddenly care so much about medical tests when she's been fine with all of Vanessa's fake episodes for years? Something about this shift feels off, like she's more worried about losing research money than actually believing anything's wrong. Mom and Dad weren't allowed in, though I could hear Mom sobbing in the hallway about lost opportunities. The anesthesiologist explained how the separation would work, how they'd divide our shared liver, remove the connected ribs, create individual closures. Vanessa maintained stony silence until the moment they wheeled us into surgery. Then she grabbed my hand with genuine desperation. For just a second, I saw my sister. Not the performer, not the manipulator, but the girl who'd shared my blood for 16 years. But then the anesthesia took hold, and I felt myself floating away from her for the first time in our lives. The last thing I heard was the steady beep of 2 different heart monitors, already learning to hit independently. I woke up alone. The sensation was extraordinary. My own edges, my own breathing, my own heartbeat without echo. The surgical site ached, but it was my pain alone. No one else feeling it. No one else's rhythm to match. Dr. Lauren checked on me hourly. The separation had gone perfectly. Vanessa was recovering in another wing, her own medical team ensuring her organs adapted to independence. We'd both survive apart. The media requests started immediately. Everyone wanted to interview the separated twins to document our journey. Mom tried to negotiate exclusive rights from her lawyer's office, but she no longer had any claim on my story. I declined every offer. My freedom wasn't for sale. Physical therapy took months, learning to balance without Vanessa's weight, to sleep without her warmth, to exist in singular space. But every day brought new discoveries. I could turn without negotiation, sleep without surveillance, breathe without performance. Vanessa recovered too, though I only heard updates through Dr. Lauren. She'd apparently embraced the media attention, selling her version of our story to the highest bidder. The girl who claimed she'd die without me was thriving in the spotlight, finally able to perform without my silent resistance. 6 months after separation, I got my first apartment, a studio with 1 bed, 1 chair, 1 set of everything. The silence was perfect. No monitors, no cameras, no fingers tracing threats in the darkness. I enrolled in online classes, catching up on the education that had been secondary to our performance schedule, got a part-time job at a bookstore where no one knew my medical history, built a life that was entirely, boringly, wonderfully mine. On our 18th birthday, I received a package. No return address, but I recognized Vanessa's handwriting. Inside was a photo from when we were young, before the money and the lies. 2 girls with 1 shadow genuinely smiling, but underneath she'd written a message. The documentary airs next month. I told them everything, my version. I threw the photo away and changed my phone number. Vanessa could have the spotlight she'd always craved. I had something better, a life where no one watched, no one paid, and no one owned my story but me. Dr. Lauren still checked in occasionally. The separation had become a case study, but she always asked permission before sharing any details. She understood what freedom meant to someone who'd never had it. One day, while shelving books at work, a customer recognized me. She'd seen early footage from the documentary, wanted to know how I was doing. I smiled politely and pointed her toward the self-help section. My story wasn't for sale anymore. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, tracing the scar where Vanessa and I had been joined. It was healing well, fading into a line that would eventually be barely visible. Proof that some connections were meant to be severed, that sometimes separation was the greatest act of love. 2 years later, I graduated from community college. Mom sent a card, probably hoping to reconnect now that the statute of limitations on her exploitation had passed. I returned it unopened. Vanessa had written a book about our lives, focusing on the trauma of separation. It sold well, funded by the same research institutions that had paid to keep us connected. She did talk show circuits, performed her pain for new audiences. I didn't watch any of it. My life was quiet, unremarkable, free. I worked, studied, made friends who knew nothing about my medical history, dated someone who touched my scars without asking for their story, built happiness in small, private moments that belonged only to me. Sometimes I'd catch myself breathing in Vanessa's rhythm, the synchronization still embedded in muscle memory, but then I'd deliberately change the pattern, choosing my own pace. That was freedom, not the absence of connection, but the choice to breathe alone. The documentary won awards. The book became a bestseller. Mom and Dad did speaking engagements about the challenges of raising conjoined twins. Everyone profited from our story except me, and that was exactly how I wanted it. On quiet nights, I wondered if Vanessa ever regretted the performances, the lies, the way she'd turned our connection into a prison. But then I'd remember her fingers tracing threats on our ribs, her smile when she threw my phone against the wall, the calculated cruelty of her love. We were never meant to be one person. We were 2 girls forced to share space, and one of us had claimed it all. Separation hadn't called either of us. It had finally allowed us both to exist. My scar had faded to silver, barely visible unless you knew where to look. Sometimes I forgot it was there, living so fully in my singular body that the years of connection felt like someone else's dream. That was the gift of freedom, not forgetting the past, but no longer being defined by it. I built my life one independent breath at a time. Each exhale a choice that was mine alone. No performances, no payments, no one else's heartbeat drowning out my own. Just the quiet rhythm of a life lived on my own terms. Finally, completely free. The recovery room felt impossibly spacious. I kept reaching for Vanessa's warmth, finding only cool hospital sheets. My body lifted to one side, unbalanced after 16 years of shared weight. The nurses assured me this was normal. My muscles would learn. Dr. Lauren visited that afternoon, checking the surgical site with gentle hands. The incision ran along where our ribs had fused, now closed with neat sutures. She explained how they divided our liver, ensuring both halves would regenerate to full size. The procedure had taken 8 hours. Vanessa was recovering 2 floors up. I asked about seeing her. Dr. Lauren's expression tightened slightly before she explained that Vanessa had requested no contact during recovery. The medical team would respect both our wishes. I nodded, understanding. We'd shared everything for 16 years. Now we'd learned to heal apart. Physical therapy started the next day. A specialist named Maria guided me through basic movements, teaching my body its new boundaries. Standing felt foreign without Vanessa's counterweight. I gripped the parallel bars, legs shaking as I relearned balance. Maria encouraged each small step, reminding me that independence took time. Mom appeared outside my room on day 3, peering through the glass partition. The nurses had instructions about visitor restrictions, but she stood there for hours, clutching papers I couldn't read from my bed. Dad joined her eventually, both of them watching me like I was still their investment. I turned away, focusing on the ceiling tiles until they left. The social worker assigned to my case brought documentation about temporary housing. Since I was still 17, the state would provide transitional support. A small apartment near the hospital, basic furnishings, enough to start. She helped me fill out applications for benefits I'd never known existed: food assistance, medical coverage, job training programs. Vanessa's surgeon visited on day 5. He mentioned carefully that she was recovering well but struggling with the adjustment. She'd been asking the nurses to check my vital signs, convinced something was wrong with her organs. They'd shown her the monitors, proving her independence. She hadn't believed them. I started walking the hospital corridors, building strength with each lap. Other patients smiled as I passed, some recognizing the determination in my gait. A man recovering from knee surgery became my hallway companion. We didn't talk much, just nodded as we passed, each focused on our own journey back to wholeness. The documentary director tried to visit. Marcus stood at the nurse's station with his camera operator explaining they had footage rights. The head nurse, a woman who'd seen too much exploitation, told them visiting hours were for family only. When they argued, she threatened to call security. They left, but not before leaving business cards for when I was ready to share my story. Physical therapy expanded to include occupational training. I learned to dress myself without accommodating another body, to shower without worrying about angles and shared space. Simple tasks felt monumental: brushing teeth, tying shoes, existing in singular form. Dr. Lauren brought papers on day 7, medical power of attorney documents, ensuring Mom couldn't make decisions about my care anymore. Insurance forms that would transfer coverage to my name when I turned 18. She thought of everything, creating a legal framework for my independence. I signed each form carefully, my handwriting shaky but determined. No one else would ever sign my name again. The nutritionist created meal plans for one person. After years of sharing every bite, calculating portions that would sustain a single body felt strange. I practiced eating alone in my room, no longer matching Vanessa's pace or preferences. The freedom to choose my own food, to eat when I wanted, was quietly revolutionary. Mom's lawyer sent a letter through the hospital administration. She was contesting the separation, claiming we'd been coerced. The hospital's legal team responded swiftly. Nothing says loving mother like treating your daughter's bodies like a business deal gone bad. Mom's out there with lawyers trying to unseparate her kids like they're returning a faulty toaster. The court had already ruled. The surgery was complete. There was nothing left to contest. I started physical therapy in the pool where buoyancy made movement easier. The water supported my unbalanced form as I relearned to swim. Each stroke felt different without Vanessa's rhythm beside me. I found my own pace, slower at first, then gradually stronger. The social worker brought job listings from nearby businesses, simple positions I could manage while continuing recovery. Bookstores, libraries, quiet places where I could work without scrutiny. I circled several options, imagining a future where I earned my own money, made my own choices. Vanessa's psychiatrist requested a joint session. I declined. We'd spent 16 years in mandatory togetherness. Healing meant learning to exist apart, even emotionally. The psychiatrist sent another request. I declined again. 2 weeks post-surgery, I moved into the transitional apartment. The space was small but private. One bedroom, one bathroom, a kitchenette where I could cook for one. I stood in the doorway for a long time, absorbing the reality of solitude. The first night alone, I couldn't sleep. The silence felt oppressive without Vanessa's breathing. I played white noise on my phone, trying different sounds until I found one that didn't remind me of her. Ocean waves worked best, rhythmic but impersonal. I returned to the hospital for follow-up appointments, watching my scar heal and fade. The liver function tests came back perfect. My body was thriving in independence. Dr. Lauren smiled at each improvement, proud of my progress. The bookstore manager called about my application. She'd had other candidates, but something about my careful handwriting, my simple honesty about needing a fresh start had stood out. Could I come for an interview? I borrowed clothes from the donation closet at the transitional housing office. Nothing fancy, just clean and professional. The interview felt surreal, discussing my availability, my interest in books, my ability to work retail hours, normal concerns for a normal job. She offered me the position on the spot. Part-time to start with potential for more hours. As I proved myself, I accepted immediately, grateful for the chance to be just another employee. Mom found my address somehow. She left packages outside my door, photo albums, medical journals featuring our case, items she thought might make me nostalgic enough to return. I donated everything to the thrift store unopened. Work became my anchor. Shelving books, helping customers, operating the register, tasks that required focus but not performance. My coworkers knew nothing about my past. To them, I was just the quiet new hire who was good with inventory. I enrolled in online GED classes, working through material I'd missed during years of medical exhibitions. Math came easily, science too. After years of hearing our condition explained, English required more work. I'd never learned to write my own story. The apartment gradually became home. I bought second-hand furniture, one piece at a time, a table for one, a single chair, a bed that didn't need to accommodate two bodies. Each purchase felt like a small victory. Dad appeared at the bookstore one afternoon. He browsed the shelves, pretending to shop while watching me work. I continued my tasks, professional and distant. When he approached the register with a book he didn't want, I processed the transaction without acknowledgement. He left the book on the counter and walked out. Physical therapy graduated to gym workouts. I joined the YMCA with a subsidized membership, exercising alongside retirees and other people rebuilding their bodies. No one stared. Everyone was focused on their own recovery. The documentary aired as Vanessa had promised. I didn't watch, but coworkers mentioned seeing advertisements. Separated, a twins story played on streaming platforms featuring Vanessa's version of our lives. The bookstore manager asked if I wanted time off. I declined. Work was better than hiding. Customers occasionally recognized me from the documentary. Most were polite, buying their books without comment. A few tried to engage, wanting to know my side. I developed a polite smile and a redirect to the store's return policy. They usually got the hint. I found a therapist through the community health center, not for the separation itself, but for learning to make decisions without considering another person's needs first. We worked on boundaries, on recognizing my own preferences, on understanding that choosing myself wasn't selfish. 6 months after surgery, I felt stable enough to take the GED exam. The testing center was quiet, filled with others seeking second chances. I finished each section methodically, drawing on years of overheard medical knowledge and recent study. The results came back 2 weeks later. I'd passed with high marks. Community college enrollment opened new possibilities. I registered for basic courses, unsure what direction to pursue, but eager to learn. The campus was small, manageable. I found quiet corners to study between classes and work shifts. Mom sent a letter through the college administration. She'd seen my enrollment somehow, wanted to pay for my education. I returned the check with a note. I'll manage on my own. Financial aid and bookstore wages would be enough. I met Sarah in biology class. She was returning to school after raising kids. Nervous about being older than traditional students, we formed a study partnership based on mutual respect for fresh starts. She never asked about my past. I never asked about hers. The scar continued fading, becoming a thin silver line along my ribs. Sometimes I forgot it was there until I caught my reflection, proof of where I'd been, but no longer defining where I was going. Vanessa published her book as threatened. I saw it displayed at competing bookstores, her face smiling from the cover. The subtitle read, "A Story of Loss and Survival." I wondered if she'd found peace in her version of truth. My life settled into routine. Work, school, study, sleep, quiet rhythms I'd chosen myself. No cameras, no performances, no one else's breath matching mine. Just the steady progress of days, building toward a future I was writing alone. On our 18th birthday, I treated myself to dinner at a small restaurant, table for one by the window. I ordered what I wanted, ate at my own pace, left when I was ready. The server didn't know it was my birthday. I didn't need anyone to know. The celebration was in the choosing. I graduated community college with an associate degree in library science. The ceremony was small, attended by people who'd earned their education through determination rather than privilege. Sarah cheered when I walked across the stage. I'd made one friend who knew me only as myself. The university accepted my transfer application. Financial aid covered most expenses. I'd continue working at the bookstore, but now with a clear path toward a career. Library work suited me. Quiet, organized, helpful, without requiring performance. I moved to a slightly larger apartment near campus, still one bedroom, but with space for bookshelves and a proper desk. I assembled furniture myself, reading instructions meant for one person, using tools I'd learned to handle. The medical study requests eventually stopped coming. Without both twins participating, we'd lost our research value. Mom's income dried up. I heard through distant channels that they'd downsized, that Dad had returned to regular work. Natural consequences I couldn't fix and wouldn't try to. Dr. Lauren retired but sent a card each year on the anniversary of the surgery. Simple messages. Thinking of you. Hope you're well. Proud of your progress. I saved each one. Proof that someone had believed I deserved freedom. I dated occasionally. Coffee with classmates, dinner with coworkers. Nothing serious at first, just practice being half of a voluntary pair. When I eventually met someone worth trusting with my history, they listened without judgment, touched my scar with gentle curiosity, understood that some stories were mine to tell or not tell. Vanessa appeared on talk shows periodically, promoting projects related to our past. I caught glimpses in waiting rooms or store displays, but never sought them out. She'd found her past. I'd found mine. They no longer needed to intersect. My thesis advisor suggested graduate school, library science programs that could lead to specialized positions. I applied carefully, choosing programs far from where we'd grown up, places where our story wasn't local history. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday, full funding for a master's program 3 states away. I sat with the news quietly, feeling the weight of possibility. Then I called Sarah, who screamed with excitement loud enough to disturb her teenagers. Packing was simple. I'd learned to live light, to own only what served my singular life. Books, clothes for one, photos from the years after, nothing from before. That girl with half a shadow could rest now. The drive to graduate school took 2 days. I stopped when tired, ate when hungry, chose music I liked. Simple freedoms that still felt profound. The highway stretched ahead, leading to places Vanessa had never been, would never be. I unpacked in my new apartment, arranging my few possessions in space that was mine to organize. Tomorrow would bring orientation, new faces, fresh starts. Tonight I sat by my window, breathing my own rhythm, existing completely in my own skin. The scar had faded to nearly nothing. Sometimes I had to search to find it, that thin line marking where my story had split from hers. But I knew it was there. A reminder that some bonds were meant to be broken, that love sometimes meant letting go, that freedom was worth every difficult step away from what we'd been told we had to be. I opened my laptop and began typing. Not our story, not her story, just mine. One word at a time, one breath at a time, one life finally fully lived alone. Thanks for letting me tag along while we puzzled through all this. Definitely made for an interesting ride. See you around. Like the video.